Hi friends, my name is host Eric, and I'm the host of Talking with Famous People, and a Typology S2's typed a great number of people. And I want to talk about the takeaways from a conversation I had earlier tonight on the live stream. So I typed this guy whose name has Yoshi in it. I don't remember exactly his full name, but it has the word Yoshi in it. And I've had a very frustrating conversation. And I think it's fair to say that I was unfairly rude and brusque with him. He caught me at a bad moment. I was not in the mood for more pushback or more people after a bunch of trolls fucking invaded the stream, you know. So Yoshi, let me just say, I'm sorry about being so rude and brusque with you. You didn't deserve that, and you deserved more patience from me than I afforded you. Here's my takeaway. So the thing is, at the end of this typing session, I was rather at a loss for what type this guy was. My basic takeaway was he seems like an ESFP, but he's definitely not TI polar. Well, after musing about it for some time, I've concluded he's almost certainly an ENFJ. And the reason that annoyed me so much, and a lot about slots can be learned from looking at that relationship. So ESFPs and ENFJs have a couple things in common. Number one, they've got NI as an instrumental value, okay? And number two, they've got TI either fourth or seventh. So, what I think is interesting is I've noted this before on a few occasions. There have been multiple ENFJs that I've encountered that I've typed that seem to do better with their fourth slot TI than some INFJs do with their third slot TI. So it's been a curious reality, but one I've noted, okay? What occurs to me today, after having musing about this, is that if we look at the 2 and the 4, you're talking about instrumental values, which means fundamentally there's a bias towards behaving as a subject in those functions. Now, if you look at an ENFJ, they've got an introverted function as their second function, which is their operational value, but it's also how they default behave as a subject. So what happened with Yoshi is I've got somebody who's an interfacer, an FEDOM, who is trying to interface with me using his tool function, namely telling me the truth about things, using NI as a subject, right? And when I'm pushing on him more for more responsiveness, in other words, answer the questions I ask, not the questions you want me to have asked, you know, he gives me 6-slot demonstrative NE. It makes perfect sense then that he's an ENFJ. On one level, I think to myself, well, why would somebody use an ENFJ like annoy me as much as he did in that moment? Not that that's a relevant factor in typing someone. I mean, it might be a tool that an individual can use in helping them to type somebody, but it's not a justification you can provide somebody you've typed, right? So, where am I going with this? What am I thinking? I'm losing my train of thought. So I'm pretty sure Yoshi's an ENFJ, and the main thing about this is the thing that kept pissing me off was not TI polar, it was SI polar, which is I kept pressing him to give me examples of things or specific concrete manifestations of an idea he's saying, and he kept not giving me examples. Now, at the time, it felt to me like TI polar because it seems to me like he's not hearing the words I'm saying because he's answering a different question. But in reality, he's not converting the question I'm asking into what I'm looking to receive from him because he's SI polar. He doesn't get the idea of like concrete examples being a necessary part of complete explanation. The example he gave me of him being insightful was a demonstration of him musing about God. And I suppose some of his observations could be deemed insightful by somebody who thought that was insightful for some reason. But the thing is, at the time, what he was basically doing is he was saying, I am, and he had a lot of trouble getting, like, converting from one to the other. I was saying, like, okay, he was saying, I'm an insightful, intuitive person, describing himself as such. And so I was saying, okay, well, give me an example of you being insightful. He couldn't do that. Instead, he demonstrated what he thought was being insightful, which maybe he was or maybe not. It doesn't matter. The point is, that's an SI polar problem, not a TI polar problem, because he was good with the TI, surprisingly good. And so let's go back to this question of why it is that the fourth slot TI of ENFJ often seems to test a little higher than the third slot TI of INFJ. Well, fourth slot operates as a subject, as an instrumental subject. So in other words, it's there to pass tests or accomplish things, like, check off things on a list that need to get accomplished in order to get to me. It's not an end in itself. So in that regard, there's an inherent subject link to things that are instrumental and an inherent agent-object link to things that are absolute. And a lot of the... So in this case, what initially seems confusing, like, okay, this guy seems really ESFP, but he's definitely passing this TI polar test. Well, in fact, he's not INTP or anything, but he's definitely not polar. And going, oh shit, but he feels to me like so much like an ESFP. Well, the answer is very clear. What I'm responding to is instrumental NI. In other words, the truth is just useful to make his point. It's not an end in itself. And his point is that he's insightful in an INFJ. ESFPs do the same sort of thing, right? And then there's this other thing that happens where they use talking about themselves, NE, more or less, and NI, but it doesn't come with an SI component, either because it's ignored in the ESFP or because it's polar in the ENFJ. So in both those types, you'll have them say, I'm a very logical thinker, and describe a bunch of things about themselves without actually being able to provide examples. Or, in the ESFP's case, they'll probably be able to provide examples when pressed, but not so naturally, right? With the ENFJs, they won't be able to provide examples really at all, and instead have to resort to demonstrations. So I think that this was an interesting phenomenon, and I again apologize, Yoshi, for being such a dick. I'm tired, sort of. I mean, actually, I got a decent amount of sleep last night, but I'm a little sprackled, you know what I'm saying? Kind of makes me a dick sometimes. But most importantly, that happened right after this fucking barrage of trolls came through trying to personally attack me and Rachel. And so I was in a not a fussy mood, but I was in a short fusey mood. So, my bad about that. You didn't deserve me to be that much of a dick. You may have deserved me being a little bit of a dick, but not nearly that much. So, I apologize. And I do think you're an ENFJ. So, you're not that wrong about your type after all.